Critical information literacy, step 3. Step 3 is telling us that yes-no judgments are hard work. So when we left off in step 2, we were asking the question, what's wrong with Black invention myths? And I suggest that it's not the facts, that there's a lot of factual information there, perhaps, again, for the sake of argument, 100% factual. You might be able to convince yourself that all of the information there is factual, so it's not the facts, but it's the conclusions. It's the misrepresentation of the process of invention. And a good representation of the process of invention is the quote, "If I have seen further than others, it is because I was standing on the shoulders of giants." And I've seen that credited to Einstein, Newton, and I believe it actually came from a scientist named John Salisbury. And so that's what invention is about. It's not about pulling things out of the air from nowhere and suddenly you've got a flash of insight that changes everything, that's nothing like anything that was before. Almost all the time, invention is built on previous things. And so if you don't recognize that, then anytime you see an invention credited to somebody and you say, but this thing was sort of like that, so that's not a new invention. That's a misunderstanding of invention, not a knock against the person who was credited with inventing that. So the problem with the Black Invention Myths site is the hidden purpose of the site. And the hidden purpose of the site is to make you think that Black people are stupid. And that's really what they're trying to do by contextualizing the information in a way that these are the inventions of Black people and they didn't do any of them. Well, you could probably do exactly the same site with white invention myths. These are the inventions of white people and they didn't do any of them, because the problem isn't with the invention itself, or the inventor itself. The problem is with the idea of invention. So they've changed it around and said, well, if I pull out all these examples of people who didn't create things from thin air and they were all Black, you're going to believe that Black people didn't invent anything. But they didn't tell you that you could do the same thing with Spanish people, with white people, with Russian people, with anybody that you might think of, because that's the way invention works. So step 3 again is telling us that yes-no judgments are really hard work. It's very hard to figure out a site like Black Invention Myths, whether we should just discard it or accept it, and maybe that's not even the right thing that we want to do. And so we want to help students move beyond the idea of just critical users. We want to move beyond those yes-no judgments. So we might want to use a few extra tools. One of the problems that our students have is when they come to a new topic that they're not familiar with, that they don't have any background knowledge, the first site they come to gives them what they think of as their background knowledge. It's all they know about that topic. So it's really helpful to look at lots of sites about the topic so that they know that the first site is helpful or not helpful, because if they find lots of sites and they all disagree with what that first site says, then that doesn't mean they necessarily discard the first site, but at least they know there's something up there. So looking at lots of sites to build that background knowledge can be very powerful. But then the next step, Brboulis and Callister tell us that you should investigate the links. You shouldn't just think about what the site says, but where does the site link to, and then who links to this site. So as an example, we can do this in Google. Now, Google keeps changing exactly the way this works, but when you go to Google, you should find a settings button. And if you don't see a settings button, just search for something and you'll probably see a little gearbox, which is a settings button. And so we'll go to settings and look at advanced search. Now, what I'm looking for used to be actually here under advanced search, but it's no longer here under advanced search. So it gives us this information, though. You can also find pages that are similar to or link to a URL. So when we click on that, It doesn't take us to the advanced search options that I would hope would be there, which used to be there, but instead it takes us to information about some various advanced search tools. And you might want to explore some of these, but the one that we're looking for is down here under search operators, and we're looking for the link colon. So that finds pages that link to a certain page. So you can't just type the address into search, but you can type link colon and then the address, and then it will tell you what links to that. So if we do that with our Black Invention site, then you'll see that there are a bunch of things that link to that site, and several of them are from the Council of Conservative Citizens, which is more than just conservative. It's a far right-wing group, and you could explore who they are to get more information, but they're very interested in this site. And there are some others that I don't always recognize. There's one that says Fringe Elements White People, so you could explore that to see what they're saying, and they are probably talking about how there's a problem with that site. So you can see that there's a lot of people that are linking to it that don't necessarily tell you everything you need to know, but add to your information about that site. And so this leads us to step 4, but we'll pause here for you to reflect on these ideas.